Greetings, namaste, and welcome to Astrology Awakening. In this drop, I'm going to be discussing, if I were going to pick something, the most fire element to discuss about Vedic astrology, perhaps to lure a curious mind in, it would be a damn near impossible task because I'm pretty obsessed with Zodiac Mini. But obsession is the theme of this drop because I'm going to be discussing Rahu and Ketu, the Karma Dragon. Most definitely, the intrigue index factor goes up when you start talking about Rahu and Ketu, the north and south nodes of the moon. In Vedic astrology, this is represented by the dragon, or the Asura demon Swarbanu. Rahu is the severed head of Swarbanu, the insatiable, obsessive. Broadly speaking, Rahu wants to eat, wants to absorb, has an insatiable appetite. Ketu is detached and doesn't want to participate, wants to take us away from what we have to participate in on a daily basis. And Rahu represents what we have come into this existence or this incarnation to achieve. And Ketu represents what we have achieved in past incarnations that we want to detach from. So depending on where Rahu and Ketu fall in your chart, that's how this will affect your life overall. The focus for this drop will be Rahu and Ketu having moved Zodiac signs. But before I get into that, I'll just talk a little bit more about Rahu and Ketu in general. So my understanding is that Western astrology does have the north and south nodes of the moon. I don't know if they call them anything like this, but I'm sure they don't. They do have also other alternative lit concepts like astral elements that like Chiron and Lilith that I don't totally understand, but I think they all kind of revolve around the moon, and that's the idea of Rahu and Ketu. Most of what I will tell you about these nodes is a mashup of Vedic concepts that I've tried to integrate into my study of other ancient wisdom-keeping traditions, like the many American Indian and South American mythologies, or the innumerable esoteric variations that sprang from the Fertile Crescent, such as probably the most famous, which is the Sumerians and their Anunnaki. Which I believe Hollywood cribs from quite a bit with their superhero obsession. Oh, and I actually recently learned from Victor Kara that the Persians were the ones who actually assigned Rahu and Ketu exaltations and debilitations, of course Persia being Iran from the Fertile Crescent. And as far as that goes, Rahu and Ketu definitely have places they like being. But my perspective on debilitations is that they're more of an unconventional wavelength, a asymmetrical, non-linear approach to whatever that sign that the planet is debilitated in. So the tale of Rahu and Ketu, how they came to be, is quite baller, and I am going to try and do it a little bit of justice in CliffsNotes version really quick. So the idea was there are the Devas and the Asuras, and this is not unlike in the Sumerian mythology, the Enlil and Anki figures, the eagle and serpent, as it were. So these are the two factions that are always battling each other in Vedic lore. And this particular story is one of the best. Indra, the king of the gods, they've lost all their power. The Devas have lost all their power. The demon king Bali, the Asura king, is basically persuaded to help the Devas churn Amrit from the ocean, Amrit being the immortality elixir. So they have this rope that they're churning from this other demon that lives at the bottom of the ocean, and it's an incredible story, but the idea is that these two factions who don't like each other have to work together for some reason. So when they actually do pull up the elixir of immortality, they're always trying to misdirect and swindle each other. So Vishnu has pretended to be somebody, and then one of the Asuras is pretended to be somebody, and the general idea is that the Asuras were never supposed to get immortality. So they steal a little bit of this elixir. When the Devas try and pull a fast one on them, they still get a little bit in, and so they cut the head off of Swarbanu, And this is the immortal dragon now that orbits the moon. If you've ever wondered what causes an eclipse, it's Rahu-Ketu. So Rahu and Ketu move on a 180-degree axis, meaning they're always facing each other. When a planet is looking at another planet, we call this a mutual aspect when they're on a 180-degree axis. So they're always looking at each other. When the sun joins one or the other and the moon joins one or the other, this is an eclipse. Rahu and Ketu are invisible. They're sort of like ghost planets, upagrahas. They're not quite planets. They were promoted to planets. They're deviant, misfit, outcasts. They don't operate according to any kind of conventional norm. And they represent something very complicated and complex, I think, because they're these ghost planets. This is my theory. I look at Rahu and Ketu as these energetic signatures from a catastrophe in our solar system that maybe created the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars when a planet was destroyed. This is an allusion maybe to Tiamat, which is a infamous planet from ancient mythologies, or the cataclysms that Immanuel Velikovsky has discussed in Worlds in Collision. Or the Dogon, of course, and many other ancient wisdom keepers who talk about our origin story as this kind of chaotic space war of the planets. And of course, the Greeks, with Saturn devouring his children in the Clash of the Titans, depicted as in the Goya painting of Saturn devouring his children. This is a depiction and a collective memory that we have of these cataclysms being repeated throughout history in narrative form, in astrotheology. Another factor that makes Rahu and Ketu so unusual is that they go in a retrograde motion. So where the planets go forward, Rahu and Ketu are almost always going backward. And I say almost always because they will sometimes go direct. So this erratic motion makes them, again, these unpredictable, scary things for a lot of classical astrologers. Rahu and Ketu, however, in a modern concept, are very important to understanding our purpose here. To that end, there is a difference in the way that we calculate now. There's true node, which is the ancient calculation. The old school Jyotishi and Rishis would have to calculate everything based on their observations. They didn't have these beautiful devices that I can use to just pull up a chart at will. So now we have something called the mean node, and this is a mathematical calculation of the average points where Rahu and Ketu fall. But full disclosure, I use the true node simply because I sort of dig my Navamsha chart, the D9 chart, more because Rahu and Ketu switch signs depending on whether I use the true node or the mean node. And if you're totally confused by now, let me just say there are so many what we call divisional charts in Vedic astrology that can be used to be a holistic perspective on you, your soul, your avatar, all that which encompasses you. And this is one of the many reasons why Vedic astrology is a full-time obsession of mine. Rahu is smoke. Rahu and Ketu are both known as planets of illusion. Since they're ghost planets, this makes a lot of sense. Rahu and Ketu have moved zodiac signs. Depending on who you ask, they moved in March according to the ancient true node, and in April according to the mean modern calculation. So Rahu has been transiting Taurus and now is moving into Aries. Ketu has been transiting Scorpio and now is moving into Libra. Why is this drop entitled 2022 Makeup Breakup Year? Rahu has moved out of Venus's ruled Taurus. Ketu is moving in to Libra, which is the other sign ruled by Venus. And Libra is the natural seventh house. What does this mean? This is the house of relationships. This is the house of business dealings, business arrangements. First, we'll explore Rahu and its effect on the transit between Taurus and Aries. Rahu actually gets exalted in Taurus according to the Vedic understanding, as Ketu is known to not only be exalted in Scorpio, but I've heard it co-rule Scorpio with Mars. Rahu also is known to co-rule Aquarius with Saturn. So it kind of shows you how these nodal points prefer certain planets as well. Rahu and Ketu both operate on an 18-month long orbit. So they go through a zodiac sign 18 months, meaning that Rahu and Ketu would have been in Taurus and Scorpio respectively during 2021 for the entire thing. It very much defines what the Rahu going through Taurus was about. Second house rules resources, home, bank accounts. So what have we been dealing with? Scarcity of resources, people being confined to their homes. And certainly the banks are in quite a bit of disarray. And the hyperinflation and stagflation are definitely being felt as Rahu is moving out of this sign. Now, what does it mean when Rahu comes into Aries? Aries is the natural first house. This is where we become our best individual selves. This is about maybe a glow up for a lot of people, and how this is going to operate off of Ketu going through the relationship house. You can kind of see how that synergistically works. For instance, I've been confined in my home with my spouse for the past couple of years because Rahu was in the second house and Ketu was in the 8th house, which is other people's resources. So I've been essentially detached from other people's resources during this period. And now Rahu is moving into the 1st house and Ketu is moving into the 7th house. Rahu wants me to now be my best individual self. Rahu wants me to act with authority and agency because this is a Mars-ruled house. This is about sparking that fire of discovery, of healing. There's a lot of potential when Rahu goes into Aries for miracle cures, miracle drugs, for miracle healing to happen. Rahu is that insatiable fire and ambition and curiosity and ability to go outside of the bounds of normal behavior and not even flinch. Rahu loves this area. So when it comes into Aries and has the excuse to focus on oneself, to now that I've been freed from confinement in my home, I need to figure out who I am in this new world. So this is going to really aid and abet those who are willing to seek out the unusual and unconventional experiences that Rahu being in this house is bound to bring, particularly as we get into the summer and planets begin to conjunct Rahu. There's going to be Sun, Venus, Mercury is already there. And you're going to feel these effects even more during this part of the year. Am I spelling a message of doom and gloom, a portent of bad things to come for anyone and everyone in relationships? Absolutely not. In fact, the whole point of Rahu and Ketu is they affect everyone differently based on your chart, and this is the case with all of the planets. What will happen is that these areas will come into a sharper focus in everyone's lives. So that's why I call it the make-up breakup. Ketu is your from your past lives, what you've achieved. So where this is in your chart, you might be very attached to these things, but what your chart and what your soul growth wants you to do is detach from those things. That's your field of expertise. Ketu moving through Libra, the natural house of relationships. Ketu moving through Libra is simply going to bring these things into intense focus. So if you're in a relationship, you may have to change things up. And if you're not in a relationship, this could bring somebody from the past, or it could bring someone from your karmic past who you've never met. And that's why these nodes are so fascinating to watch, because they're 18 months long. And therefore, they're going to have all kinds of shifting focus. For instance, Ketu at the back half of 2022 is going to feel what Rahu is feeling right now, with planets moving through it. So where Rahu might have a lot of focus on the individual right now, that individual will then have to deal with the relationship, the business partnership towards the end of the year. And by 2023, we might all be wondering, are we in the right place? Are we in the right job? Are we in the right romantic partnership? Do I have the right friends? Do I have the right associations with anything? Because Rahu is also second house, moving through Taurus, was values. Our value systems are all being thrown into whack. So Rahu coming into Aries will make us want to act on these new concepts, and Ketu in Libra is going to help us be willing to separate from the old stuff that doesn't work for us anymore. To wrap up, I'll just say a little praise to Shukra, to Venus, because she has been sort of keeping everything stable and balanced, and will continue to do so through her houses. And now she's coming into Pisces, where she'll be exalted conjunct Jupiter at the end of April. So this is a nice jumping off point for Rahu and Ketu to switch Venus signs to Venus swap. And going forward, relationships will, as I said, be the focus for certainly the rest of the latter part of 2022 and all of 2023. Our relationship to ourselves is in many ways going to be the focus. And that's sort of going to prompt, if you're in a relationship, is this person, is this partnership going to enhance the best me? And I myself am very passionate about this. Relationship readings are incredibly simple and perfect in the zodiac form in a lot of ways, and you can tell a lot from these charts to optimize certain transits for accelerating the gas maybe on something, or pumping the brakes. So if you have any questions and you want a consultation about relationships or career, hit me up. I'm certainly new to this field of giving public consultations. I've done many private ones, but this is certainly, I feel, what I've been called to dharmically, to at least offer myself of service. So gratitude, and I thank you for watching.